Hello, I'm James Champion. I'm about to travel in the footsteps of my great-grandfather George Charles Champion, who was an insect collector in Guatemala and Panama from 1879 to 1883. Now, when I travel to Panama, unlike when I was in India, I will not be able to use photographs taken by my great-grandfather, which I could do using photographs taken by my grandfather, his son, when I was in India, in order to locate precisely where he was. However, there is an opportunity for me to see what the places that he visited when he was in Guatemala looked like, roughly at the same period, because a famous photographer called Muybridge had traveled to Guatemala in 1875, and he took very much the same locations that my great-grandfather visited shortly afterwards. Now, Muybridge was a very famous photographer and later became even more famous as the father of cinematography. He was the developer of the moving image. But the story is quite dramatic because Muybridge murdered his wife's lover and was due to appear in court. Finally, he was acquitted of this murder, but his reputation had been somewhat damaged, and he ran away from California to Central America and spent a year photographing roughly the same places that my great-grandfather visited shortly afterwards. The reason for this, of course, was that in those days, Western, or how can I say, visitors from Europe or North America all stayed with roughly the same coffee planters and so on, because there were not very many hotels in those days. Now, Muybridge actually stayed in precisely the same locations that my great-grandfather did, and this is actually a montage of photographs from his album of his Central American journeys. And Muybridge stayed in a coffee plantation that was owned by a Mr. William Nelson, because he was engaged, as well as to photograph tourist scenes, he was also engaged to photograph the process of coffee making. Now, William Nelson was a coffee planter who owned two coffee plantations, the Finca San Isidro and the Finca Las Nubes, the latter of which was on the slopes of the volcan or Cerro Sunil, which was where, of course, my great-grandfather found the butterfly Drusina championi. Muybridge photographed both fincas extensively, and because my great-grandfather spent a lot of time on both fincas, this gives me the opportunity to see very much what it was like at the time when he was there. Here we can see a picture of the Hacienda William Nelson San Isidro, Guatemala in 1875, and of course my great-grandfather was there in 1880, so there wouldn't be much difference between what it looked like in 1875 and 1880. And here we can see the machinery for pulping coffee at Las Nubes in 1875. Now, the Finca Las Nubes is on the slopes of the volcano. They'd cleared the forest in order to plant the coffee bushes, but they left some of the trees standing to provide some shade, and it's still operating as a coffee plantation today. It provides a lot of coffee to Starbucks, and many of those ancient trees are still standing. The building you can just see on the left still stands, and it was in that building that my great-grandfather stayed in 1880, and I shall be staying in the same building. Here again you can see a scene taken from that building looking up towards the Volcan Sunil, the volcano, and it was on that volcano that my great-grandfather found the butterfly Drusina championi, so I shall be climbing up that mountain in order to look for the butterfly. Now, when he returned from Central America, George Charles married James Walker's sister Adelaide, and you can see them here sitting on a bench together. And I'm going to stop at this point, and I shall tell you about the next stage in the following part. I hope you'll join me then.